Computer. Okay, we're hoping this is gonna work. Okay. So before we jump into behavioral therapy, if I were to ask you what your role as a social worker looks like when you're doing psychodynamic therapy or psychoanalytic, what would you say? What was that? Okay. Yep, that's our goal. What's our role? Blank slate. There you go. Right. Are we like equal playing fields, like, or are we the experts? We're the experts. So y'all write that down. Okay. Right. I just wanted to review because I always feel like I'm gonna review. Next week, after we go over CBT, we're gonna talk more about the midterm, i.e. So we're gonna do that next week. The week after is actually your midterm, and here's some great news. We're supposed to take the midterm here, right in class, in the computer lab. So you're not doing that. What we are gonna do. What we are going to do is that during class time, I'm going to open the exam on Blackboard. And you can take it in your bunny slippers at home. You can come here and find yourself a computer lab, if that's what you want to do. I don't care where you take it on your laptop. Come sit in class on your computer. I don't care where you take it, okay? So, because of that, but it's only going to be open during class time, okay?
Thank you.
Thank you. So, the other piece of that is that I can't really control whether you're using your notes or not. It would be nice if you didn't, but. It's kind of like when students come up with case examples. They're always like, no, you have to do this from your internship. As if I'm there and I'm right now, I did that whole case study about my brother, and you'll never know the difference, right? Like, it's okay, it's an academic exercise and it's still worthwhile, okay? I mentioned before how much I hate exams. Look, my kids have like fun everywhere. It keeps coming out of my pocket. Sorry. So anyway, okay. So the 14th, you'll take it from 9 to noon, wherever you want to. I'm going to tell you the questions next week. You won't have the case study. You'll have to read the case study. You'll know what you need to know because you already know the questions. Okay? Good? It's not going to be hard. I mean, all of our little questions that you've done on your little phones when we've been playing around, like if you can answer those, you can do the midterm just fine. Okay? All right. Good, good. All right. So, yeah. Is this timing? What was that? Are you doing the timing? Like, what time? It'll be 9 to noon. You have to log in during those times. Minute by noon. Okay. Okay, so you have to do it at the same time. Not a free-for-all. Okay. How many questions? There's like 5 questions, but I'm going to tell you all about it next week. Okay. Okay. Don't worry. Basically, you're going to have to analyze the case from a psychodynamic perspective and from cognitive behavioral. Just that easy. Okay. All right. So today we're laying the foundation for cognitive behavioral because we're going to talk about behavioral therapy. Okay. But I don't know about you. Is everybody have like an awesome Monday morning so far, or is it kind of not so great? Like not so great. Oh, the not so great on this side. Yeah, it's a Monday. I woke up and there was no water in our house. That's all. Oh, it's like, hey, guess what? I woke my husband up and I said, happy birthday, there's no water. And he was like, later, and then it registered, and he was like, and he got up and he didn't believe me. So we went and turned every faucet on in the house. And then I said, oh, guess what? My stinky self is going to work. Have fun with that box. And I ran out the door. So, yeah. So this is a really good week for behavioral therapy. So all the way down, I was working on my deep breathing. I'm going to share that with you now because we're going to do some meditation. Because part of both cognitive behavioral and behavioral therapy is learning stimuli response. Really, that's what we're working on. We're going to talk about that. I'm going to show you all the PowerPoint slides. But stimuli response, that's what it's all about. Like, what's the trigger? Antecedent, what's the consequence? It's just stimuli response. That's what we're looking at. In trauma, when we're working with trauma, that's exactly what we're thinking about too. There's so many branches of behavioral therapy that really, like, that's where we're focused. So, but part of that is that we teach people deep breathing. We teach them relaxation techniques, progressive muscle relaxation, and meditation that sort of fits into their own value system. Because what we're trying to do is teach people, we're creating a pathway in their brain to learn how to relax, to shut down the physiological response that you might have to a trigger. And the more they practice it, the better they get at it. So what happens is that we have people practice these techniques so that when they get into a crisis and there's a trigger, they have a choice. Their brain says, oh, I can get really worked up, or I can calm myself down. And so oftentimes folks will say, well, I tried deep breathing, it didn't work. When did you try it? Well, right after I got in a car accident. Well, okay, sure it didn't work, because we have to practice it before we get there, right? And that's what oftentimes is hard to get people buy-in, because it's a skill they have to learn so that then they can apply it later when they need it, okay? This really taps into that whole idea of neuroplasticity, right? Is that if we learn skills and we've made that groove in our brain and that pathway, we'll be able to tap into it when we need it. But if we haven't practiced it, it's not going to be there for us, and then we're just going to be in an anxiety cycle, and there we are, right? Okay. So we're going to start off by watching, I say this every week, one of my favorite videos, because I love them all, okay? But I really do like this one a lot. So you know I like a video when I make everyone in my family watch it. Like even like when my kids are 5, I'm like, sit down, you're watching this video. So this is one of those because I think that Shauna Shapiro does such a fantastic job with this. And this talks about meditation. So we're gonna watch this. It's about 13 minutes, and it's absolutely worth every minute. And then afterwards, we're gonna do a little meditation. But I think this one will help you be forgiving of yourself when you get into a meditation and you're like, it doesn't work and I hate it. Okay? This one helps kind of frame that. So, okay, here we go. No one fall asleep. I know it's still early. Yeah.
I have a quick question before we move on to psychodynamics. So when we were watching the video last week, would it be fair to say that you would need a lot of time? And it almost seems like the therapist would have to be very patient and very focused and very centered and very present on what's going on. I'm just wondering how practical that kind of therapy would be in a run-of-the-mill agency where you've got all of these clients and all of this paperwork and all of this documentation. And somebody, you're with your 10 o'clock and somebody's in at 11 and you're looking at the clock. And because it just seems like you really need that time.
Lots of time. Yeah. I mean, you can do it. I mean, I think you can do it in 1-hour sessions multiple times a week. That's one of the critiques of traditional psychodynamic therapy. Now, brief psychodynamic therapy has kind of molded itself to fit into the structure that we have now. You can do it once a week. But traditionally, people were being seen like 5 days a week for multiple hours for 2 years straight. That's not happening. That's like, unless someone's private paying for that, there's no way that's happening. It's not realistic for any of the agencies that we work at. It's just not going to happen. And it requires people to have some ability to do insight-oriented therapy. Right? It's all about insight. It's all about bringing things into our awareness, and not everybody's up for that. I think we talked a little bit last week, like when we're talking about like people's basic needs, Nobody is ready to be like, I really want to work on my unconscious stuff when they don't have a place to stay and they don't have something to eat and they don't have, they don't feel like they have any, they don't feel loved or attached. Like, it's just not going to happen. Is it good for some? Absolutely. And I think there's pieces of it, particularly like the defense mechanisms and that kind of thing, that is really helpful. It's helpful for us to see why people are interacting with people the way they might be based on past experiences. Is it really going to be the level and in-depth work that a lot of our clients are willing and wanting to do? Not really. I think that that's one of the reasons why, you remember, we're starting at the beginning and going all the way, going in the other direction. That now there's such a push for mindfulness-based stuff, for solution focus. It's quick and easy. People come in and they're like, I feel horrible. It's more like, all right, let's work on that. Like, here and now, let's get it, 5 sessions later, they're like, I feel better. Great. Right? Have we hit the underlying personality development issues that could have led to that? Nope, not at all. But we've relieved the symptoms and people feel better. Does that help?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So here we go. Can you hit the lights for me? And we'll watch this.
In rush hour traffic, you can remain perfectly calm. If you can see your neighbors travel to fantastic places without a twinge of jealousy, if you can love everyone around you unconditionally, and if you can always find contentment just where you are, then you're probably a dog, right? We hold ourselves to these unrealistic standards of perfection, and then we judge ourselves when we don't live up to them. The thing is, we're not supposed to be perfect. Perfection isn't possible, but transformation is. All of us have the capacity to change, to learn, and to grow, no matter what our circumstances. As a professor and scientist, I study how people change, how people transform. And one of the most effective vehicles I've found is mindfulness. My own journey into mindfulness was unexpected. When I was 17, I had spinal fusion surgery, a metal rod put in my spine. I went from a healthy, active teenager to lying in a hospital bed unable to walk. And during the many months of rehabilitation, I tried to figure out how to live in this body that could no longer do what it used to. The physical pain was difficult, but worse was the fear and the loneliness, and I simply didn't have the tools to cope. So I began searching for something that could help, and eventually the search led me to a monastery in Thailand for my first meditation retreat. At the monastery, the monks didn't speak much English. I didn't speak any Thai, but I understood mindfulness had something to do with paying attention in the present moment. My only instruction was to feel the breath going in and out of my nose. So I began. 1 breath, 2 breaths. My mind wandered off. I brought it back. 1 breath, 2 breaths. It wandered again, sucked into the past or lost in the future. And no matter how hard I tried, I just couldn't stay present. Now this was frustrating because I thought meditation was supposed to feel like this, and instead it felt more like this. Being present isn't so easy. In fact, check it out for yourself. I've been speaking for about 3 minutes. Have you noticed your mind has wandered? All of our minds wander. Research from Harvard shows the mind wanders on average 47% of the time. 47%. That's almost half of our lives that we're missing, that we're not here. So part of mindfulness is simply learning to train the mind in how to be here, where we already are. Like right now. Let's practice together. Allow your eyes to close and just feel your feet on the floor. Wiggle your toes and sense your whole body sitting here. Softening the face, softening the jaw, and notice that you're breathing. Feeling the breath as it naturally flows in and out of the body. Just being here. And as you're ready, taking a deeper breath in and out, allowing your eyes to open. So, back at the monastery, I was trying hard to do just this, and just be present. But no matter how hard I tried, my mind kept wandering off. And at this point, I really started to judge myself. What is wrong with you? You're terrible at this. Why are you even here? You're a fake. And then not only was I judging myself, I started judging everyone, even the monks. Why are they just sitting here? Shouldn't they be doing something? Thankfully, a monk from London arrived who spoke English. And as I shared with him my struggles, he looked at me and said, "Oh dear, you're not practicing mindfulness. You're practicing judgment, impatience, frustration." And then he said 5 words that have never left me. What you practice grows stronger. What you practice grows stronger. We know this now with neuroplasticity. Our repeated experiences shape our brain. We can actually sculpt and strengthen our synaptic connections based on repeated practice. For example, in the famous study of London taxi drivers, the visual spatial mapping part of the brain is bigger, stronger. They've been practicing navigating the 25,000 streets of London all day long. When you look at the brains of meditators, the areas related to attention, learning, compassion grow bigger and stronger. It's called cortical thickening, the growth of new neurons in response to repeated practice. What we practice grows stronger. The monk explained to me that if I was meditating with judgment, I was just growing judgment. Meditating with frustration, I'm growing frustration. He helped me understand that mindfulness isn't just about paying attention. It's about how we pay attention, with kindness. He said it's like these loving arms that welcome everything, even the messy, imperfect parts of ourselves. He also pointed out that we're practicing all the time, moment by moment, not just when we're meditating, but in every moment. We're growing something in every moment. So the question really becomes, what do you want to grow? What do you want to practice? When I left Thailand, I wanted to keep practicing mindfulness. And I wanted to understand it scientifically. So I began a PhD program, eventually became a professor, and I've spent the past 20 years investigating the effects of mindfulness across a wide range of populations, including veterans with PTSD, patients with insomnia, women with breast cancer, stressed out college students, high-level business executives, and over, the data showed 2 key things. First, mindfulness works. It's good for you. It strengthens our immune functioning, it decreases stress, decreases cortisol, helps us sleep better. When we published our first research back in '98, there were only a handful of studies. Now there are thousands of studies showing the beneficial effects of mindfulness. It's good for us. The second thing we learned was quite unexpected. Almost all the people we were working with, regardless of their age, their gender, their background, were talking about the same thing. This underlying sense of, I'm not good enough, I'm not okay, I'm not living this life right. This tremendous self-judgment and shame. And we all know what they were talking about because shame is universal. All of us feel it. And worse, we have this mistaken belief that if we shame ourselves, if we beat ourselves up, we'll somehow improve. And yet, shame doesn't work. Shame never works. It can't work. Literally, physiologically, it can't work because when we feel shame, the centers of the brain that have to do with growth and learning shut down. This fMRI shows the brain on shame. What happens is the amygdala triggers a cascade of norepinephrine and cortisol to flood our system, shutting down the learning centers and shuttling our resources to survival pathways. Shame literally robs the brain of the energy it needs to do the work of change. And worse, when we feel shame, we want to avoid it. So we hide from those parts of ourselves we're ashamed of, the parts that most need our attention. It's just too painful to look at them. So what's the alternative? Kind attention. First, kindness gives us the courage to look at those parts of ourselves we don't want to see. And second, kindness bathes us with dopamine, turning on the learning centers of the brain and giving us the resources we need to change. True and lasting transformation requires kind attention. And the monk's words echoed in my ears. Mindfulness isn't just about attention, it's about kind attention. This attitude of kindness wasn't just a footnote or something nice to have, it was an essential part of the practice, a part of mindfulness that's so often overlooked. So my colleagues and I developed a model of mindfulness that explicitly includes our attitude and our intention, as well as our attention. All three parts working together synergistically. But simply, mindfulness is intent, paying attention is kindness. We used this model while working at the Veterans Hospital for a group of men with PTSD. I was shocked to learn that we lose more veterans to suicide each year than to combat. Our soldiers carry so much pain and shame. So the intention of the mindfulness group was to cultivate this kind of attention, even for the seemingly unforgivable parts of ourselves. There was one man in the group who never said a word, never looked up. 2 months passed, he seemed unreachable. And then one day he raised his hand and he said, "I don't want to get better. What I saw in the war, what I did, I don't deserve to get better." He then looked down at the floor and proceeded to tell us in great detail what he'd seen and what he had done. And I can still feel the horror of what he shared and how his shame filled the room. I looked up to see how the other men were responding, and there was no judgment, only compassion on their faces. I invited him to look up and to witness this compassion and this kindness. And as he slowly looked around the room, his face began to soften. And in his eyes there was hope. The possibility that he wasn't just his past action, that he could choose differently now, that he could change. And this may be one of the most important things I've learned, is that transformation is possible for all of us, no matter what. And it requires kind attention, not shame. And this kind attention takes practice. It takes lots of practice. I want to share with you a simple practice that continues to help me. Some years ago, I was going through a difficult divorce, and I'd wake up every morning with this pit of shame in my stomach. My meditation teacher suggested an explicit practice of kind attention. He said, "How about saying, 'I love you, Shauna,' every day?" I thought to myself, no way. It felt so contrived. He saw my hesitation and suggested, "How about just saying, 'Good morning, Shauna?' Oh, and try putting your hand on your heart when you say it. It releases oxytocin. It's good for you, you know." He knew the science would win me over. So the next day, put my hand on my heart, took a breath, and said, "Good morning, Shauna." And it was kind of nice. I continued to practice, and a month later when I saw her, I admitted how helpful it had been. "Wonderful, you've graduated," she said. "Now, the advanced practice. Good morning, I love you, Shauna." So the next day, put my hand on my heart, anchored myself, and said, "Good morning, I love you, Shauna." I felt nothing, except maybe a little ridiculous, but definitely not love. But I kept practicing because, as I know, what we practice grows stronger. And then one day I put my hand on my heart, took a breath. "Good morning, I love you, Shauna." And I felt it. I felt my grandmother's love. I felt my mother's love. I felt my own self-love. And I wish I could tell you that every day since then has been this bubble of self-love and I've never felt shame or judgment again. That's not true. But what is true is this pathway of kind attention has been established and it's growing stronger every day. So I want to invite you tomorrow to put your hand on your heart and say good morning. And if you're really brave, good morning. I love you. Thank you.
Okay. I love that video because it's the idea of cortical thickening is what we're really trying to get to, right? Is that we want to establish these pathways, and we can establish new pathways in our brain the more we practice things, right? And so for some people, they might say, well, you know, like putting my hand over my heart and saying I love you is not going to work for me, right? And that's okay. We have to tap into what works for the individual person, okay? Some people will come in and they'll say, prayer really works for me. And okay, make that your meditation. That's okay. When we look at meditation, all of them have the same effect, whether it's prayer, whether it's mindfulness, progressive muscle relaxation, a body scan, guided imagery. All of them are going to the same thing. It's just that certain things work for some and not for others. The first time I did a body scan, it literally thought I was going to throw myself into a panic attack. So I was like, I've never felt my big toe. Oh my gosh, I feel my big toe. And I thought, I hate feeling my big toe. And it was horrible. That didn't work for me. But the more I practiced it, the better I got at it and could tolerate doing that. But it's different for each person. Okay. All right. So now that we've watched that and we can participate in a progressive muscle relaxation without shame when our mind goes 5,000 different places, right? We're going to practice it. So here you go. You ready? It's already dark in here. You don't have to worry about that. So sit comfortably. Look, I had one that was 15 minutes and I thought people can tolerate that. So found this one here. And let's just do this. Now I'm showing you this because this is something that you can do with your clients. I teach my clients progressive muscle relaxation all the time. So here you go.
Patience. I'm taking a slow, deep breath.
Hold on. We're going to go back because I didn't get to the beginning.
In this relaxation, I'm taking a slow, deep breath. Breathe in. Hold. Breathe out. Now let's squeeze away muscle tension. Raise your shoulders up towards your ears. Squeeze tight. Hold. And now release. Let your shoulders drop. Relax your neck. Relax your shoulders. Now squeeze your eyes shut while tightening your eyebrows together and clench your jaw. Hold. Squeeze tight. And now let go. Let your forehead be smooth. Let your eyes rest gently. Let your mouth and jaw be loose. Now squeeze both hands into fists while tightening your whole arm as you squeeze. Tighter and tighter. Now all at once, let go. Let your arms and hands come to rest. Now that we've squeezed away muscle tension, let's see if we can further deepen this feeling of relaxation. If you haven't already, close your eyes. Now in your mind's eye, imagine standing on a quiet beach facing a beautiful ocean. See the rolling waves as they lap at the shore. Feel a gentle warm breeze lightly caressing your face and your hair. See the blue sky, not a cloud to be seen. You feel soothed by the warmth of the sun as it bathes your face, your shoulders, and your back. You feel so relaxed, peaceful, and calm.
Wow. That's really loud after that. Okay. Right. Yeah. Okay, how do you feel now? Anyone feeling a little more relaxed? Okay. Yeah, well, that's you. All right. That's not our lecture. That's weird. So let's, oh, there it is. Ah. Okay. All right, so before we go from this place to practicing and teaching one another, you turn the lights back on. Okay, so oftentimes I'll teach clients that to help them have something to practice and hopefully be able to utilize when they're feeling anxious. Practicing before next week. But sometimes also I'll be teaching other kinds of deep breathing because that can be really helpful. So doing things like in my office I have like a little sandbag, having them put that on their chest or on their stomach, and so they're breathing out and breathing in, and when they breathe in, they want to make sure that the sandbag goes up and down. Just again, helping them become more aware of their breathing and being in the moment is really very helpful. There's a nerve that's in the back of your throat and the back of your head here, just all the way down your spine. The vagal, I would say vagus. Seems good, right? Nerve that goes all the way down. And when you massage that nerve, it makes it physically impossible for the anxiety response to continue. Like your heart rate slows down, your breathing slows down, and you cannot remain in an aroused state when you are massaging that nerve. And the way that you do that, we're going to practice, okay, is that you imagine that you have a mirror. If you are working with a kid, I often tell them like Darth Vader, they have a frame of reference for that. But if you put your hand up to your mouth, and we're just going to try it, and you pretend that that's a mirror and you want to fog the mirror, right? So you go, feel how it tightens the back of your throat, just restrict right down there. Feel that? Okay. So now just practice that for a second. So everybody's going to sound stupid together. So get ready, right? Breathe in and just keep doing it. Feel the difference? Yeah, a little bit, maybe. If you're anxious, maybe. We just did a deep breathing and all that. You might be pretty calm. But it helps you massage that nerve, which brings everything down. Your blood pressure will come down, your pulse will come down, your respirations, everything. The key too, and this is always interesting, people say to me, well, I practice my deep breathing. I'm like, can you show me how you do that? And they're like, and I'm like, wow, like you made yourself hyperventilate. Let's work on doing it the right way. So it's always that we want to breathe in, and we want to breathe out for longer than our breath in. Yeah? Just in case anybody missed that somewhere along the way, right? You breathe in maybe to 5, try to breathe out to 10, and try to constrict the back of your throat. Okay? I'm going to show you one more. Now that we're having fun with that. I like to teach all of these as if I'm teaching my clients, because if you can learn how to do it, then you can teach your clients how to do it, and then it'll be much more helpful than what. Okay, the other one is, how many of you work with children? So kids like this one. It's the bumblebee breath. Everybody done that anyone in yoga before? Yeah, so much fun, right? So I teach my kids how to do this, and you know that you've scored when you teach a kid how to do this, and it's like, look, if you get upset on the playground, something happens, I want you to stop for just a moment and do a couple quick bumblebee breaths. And then you go to like
pull them out to go see them for therapy, and you see them on the playground and they're doing it, and you think, yes, they're doing it, how sweet is that? But best ever was when I went to pull one of them out, and they were talking to another little girl, this little boy I had been seeing, he was talking to another mom, he's like, I can tell you what I said, let me show you how to do this really quick. And showed them how to do a bumblebee rag, and they both calmed themselves down, and I was like, there you go, see one, teach one, do one, it's perfect, right? So here it goes, okay, this is another one that forces the physiological response of anxiety to shut down, okay? So okay, get ready, people. Here we go. Your thumbs are gonna go in your ears. Don't do that part yet. You won't be able to hear me, okay? But they're going, all right? Your pinkies are going on the side of your mouth, okay? Come on, come with me. And now your ring finger is gonna go on the side of your nose, here on your nostrils. Don't push down now, I want you to breathe, okay? Your pointer finger is gonna go on the side of your eyes. Right there, okay, got it? And for those of us who have eye makeup on, it's very unfortunate because your middle finger is gonna go right over your eyelids like that, okay? What you're gonna do is you're gonna put your thumbs, when you're gonna do this, you're gonna close your eyes, put your thumbs in your ears, don't do it yet, and then you're gonna hum like a bee. I'm gonna do it first so you can see how good it goes like this. Ready? Breathe in. Okay, are you ready? Here we go. Take a deep breath and buzz like a bee. Do it again. How does it feel? Did you get your thumbs really good in your ears? That's the key. Because it shuts down all of the outside world. And you're just, but now I got to what was that? Yeah, right? Yeah. 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 Oh yeah, taught your little kids how to do that. Yeah, I'll teach little kids how to do it, and they might not get all the, all that part of it, but usually they do get that because she does very well, right? But it shuts down all the outside stimuli and gets people aware of what's going on inside their body just long enough for them to calm down.
I have another one, like the ones with fingers, like you breathe in.
Yeah.
In the fingers. I'm not really sure how to do that. Do you know how to do that?
I haven't done that one.
Oh, I know. It's just like as you breathe in. Because you're also counting 10.
Right.
You do it the whole way down, and if you're still not feeling it, we're not dizzy, you go back. But it's slow, because it gets into the nutrition.
Yeah. Right. This reminds me of Sorry, I was just on vacation on Disney for a second there. But yes, that's a great way to do it too. Yeah. Any of these things that, I mean, if they're helpful, great. If they're not, okay. But find something that works for your client. I've taught adults how to do bumblebee, and they've been like, hey, you know what? I can totally do that. Now, it's always good if you're teaching kids, like, to do this as a coping mechanism to let their teacher know also. All of a sudden, they come home and they're like, and they're like, what are you doing, weirdo? So you want to make sure that the adults in their lives know what they're doing to cope, but it works really well. And again, it's a physiological response. The great part is that when someone starts doing some of these techniques, they realize that they have the power to control how they're feeling in the moment, which is amazing because now we're empowering them for change, and they realize that they can change that. Okay. When I was pregnant with my twins, or continuously, I had white coat syndrome all the time, and so I would get in there and they'd be like, "Your blood pressure is so high. We need to admit you," and I'd be like, "Turn the light off. Give me 5 minutes." And they're like, "No, you can't." And I'm like, "Yeah, I can." And I would get so deeply relaxed, they'd come back and it would be low, and
We were like, because I really hate you, and I don't want to say how you are, but I hate you. But I would just do that, and so you realize that you really can control it. And that's very empowering for people. Okay, there we go. Now that we've done all of our practice, we're going to talk about behavioral therapy. So when I say behavioral therapy, I should have done one of those little creative art things that we did last week. I say behavioral therapy, hopefully things that are coming to mind are classic conditioning, operant conditioning, social learning theory, and maybe some systematic desensitization, okay? Did any of those come to mind for people? We're going to walk through each one of them, okay? So, so the basic concepts here that are really important and so very different from what we've been talking about thus far. In behavioral analysis, we are always looking at the stimuli and the consequence. Right? Stimuli response, that's what we're looking for. And so we're helping, oftentimes we can help people realize what their triggers are. And then we can either help them learn to cope with their triggers, disrupt the stimuli response in some way. We can avoid that trigger if need be, but we can come up with a behavioral plan to either avoid the trigger, limit the trigger, or become somewhat desensitized to the trigger, or learn another coping response, right? Always stimuli response is what we're looking at. When we get to the cognitive behavioral therapy, we know that there's another element that we're going to be adding into that. But for today, we're just doing stimuli response. And each one of these we're going to kind of go through. I need to change my slide to the next one. Here we go, behavioral analysis, the first one. Operant conditioning. I would love to say that this is probably one of the most misunderstood elements of behavioral therapy all together. We mess these things up all the time, okay? And then we wonder why behavior stays the same because we have inadvertently reinforced something that we wouldn't mean to, or we punish something that we probably shouldn't have, and it gets very confusing. So let's go through each one of these. When we're talking about behavioral therapy, I'm not talking about your emotions. I don't care what's going on in your brain, okay? Other than I'm going to use some neuroplasticity to come up with a different pathway. But as far as emotions and cognitions, that's not what we're looking at, okay? We're looking at observable behavior. Observable behavior. And so this is oftentimes why we end up using behavioral therapy with kids, to modify behavior. But rest assured, we can use this across the board. I use behavioral therapy with couples all the time. Because what happens, like, right, if you're in a relationship, there are triggered responses all the time. Triggers. And so we're going to talk about some of those because I'm going to teach you some of the stuff, like, because it applies to kids so well, and it's really easy to see. But don't be fooled. It can be used across the board with adults, with couples, family counseling, all the time, okay? So we're looking at observable behavior, and behavior is directly related to consequences. Yeah, that makes sense. All of our behavior is directly related to the consequence that we're going to get, whether it be a positive consequence or a negative consequence. That's how behavioral schools narrow it down. It's all related to consequences. How many of you would have a bad day and scream at your boss? It's right. There's probably a negative consequence to that you don't really want, right? Now, here's the interesting piece. You have a bad day and you're mad at your boss or your coworker or something like that. How many of you will come home and either yell at your child, your roommate, or your partner? Yeah, we don't have as much trouble with that, do we? Why not?
Because the consequences are less severe.
That's right.
But I
For a
think
time.
the one that can cause problems.
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm. Well, and that's the thing, is that the consequences that we have when we're with our family are oftentimes not as severe until they get super severe, and then we cross over into the unknown, which isn't such a great thing, right? But in general, we can come home and yell at our partner, and our partner might look at us and be like, "What's wrong with you?" And they're not going to fire us. Now, if we do a repeated pattern of that, they may fire us at some point and like to say, "Peace out, no more, thanks so much," right? So we have to be careful with that. But it's all about consequences. We will continue a behavior if the consequence works for us. So if it's not all that negative and we can tolerate it, all right, it's okay. But if it's really bad or it crosses over the line, then we might have a more severe consequence, and then we might want to change our behavior. Yeah.
They call that the antecedent behavior consequence.
Yeah.
So prior to the behavior, what is happening? It kind of gives you like a nice contextual background of like
Yeah.
the behavior prior, antecedent, the behavior, and then the consequence.
Yeah. The ABC.
Yeah, the ABC.
Yeah. So here's the thing, and I don't want you to get confused. I don't like talking about ABCs so much. I like stimuli response in behavioral therapy, because when we get to cognitive behavioral therapy, we're going to use ABCs, and it's going to mean something different. Okay. So we still have we have two versions of the ABCs, because here we're talking about the antecedent, what the stimuli is, right? The behavioral response that we have, and the consequence to it. But in cognitive behavioral therapy, we're talking about the stimuli, our belief about it, and the emotional consequence. So don't get hung up there. We'll talk more about ABCs later, but that's a great point, because we're really talking about a stimuli, our response, and then there's consequences from that, all right? So it is.
I had kind of stuck there. I did ABA for like 2 years, so
Yeah.
that's why.
Right, yeah, I know.
Still did me.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm glad it is, because it's really the way I like to think about it is behavioral therapy is an equation. We're looking at an equation. Here's the stimuli, and here's the response and the consequence. That's what we're looking at. And what we're trying to do is impact the behavioral consequences, because sometimes you can impact the stimuli, sometimes you can't. But we're going to impact that equation of stimuli response. Okay? All right. So, and again, we're looking at behavioral responses here. We're not looking at our way that our personality developed. Not so interested in what happened when you were 0 to 6, right? We're not concerned about determinism, is that you've been predisposed to a certain way of thinking or attaching and interacting with the world, right? That's all psychodynamic. This is about behavior that we can see and how we're going to change it, okay? All right, so positive reinforcements. Here's what I want to just kind of review, because these get confusing sometimes. But I want you to think about it this way. We have two different things going on here. We have reinforcements. Reinforcements are always meant to encourage the behavior we want. Reinforcement is going to encourage the behavior. I want more of that, so I'm going to reinforce it in some way. Okay? Punishment is always that I want to shut down that behavior. So we have reinforcement that wants to encourage it, and we have punishment that wants to stop it. Okay? Discourage it. That's down. Important. Reinforcement always is encouraging the behavior we want. Punishment is stopping the behavior we don't. And then there's two versions of each. There's positive and negative. And this is really not all that challenging. Positive, we are going to add something in. Whether it be a reinforcement or a punishment, we're adding something in. Negative, we're taking something out. Whether it be to reinforce or to punish, we're taking something out. Kind of makes sense, right? Positive, negative. Okay? This is your math for today. As hard as it's going to get. Positive, we're always adding something in. Negative, we're always taking something out. Reinforcements, we're always trying to increase the behavior that we want. Punishment, makes sense. We're trying to stop a behavior we don't want. Let's break that down. Positive reinforcement. We are adding something in that's positive of value because we want to encourage a particular behavior. We're reinforcing it. Can anybody think of a great example of that? Adding something in to encourage a behavior.
So like, I'm trying to think of it, like rewarding the child with a tangible reinforcer that will allow them to continue to do the behavior. So for example, for like a session with the kids who have autism, you know, giving them their favorite, you know, food, like, you know, like it might be an M&M or a carrot, whatever, you know, is individual for them. Continue to reward them when they did the behavior and then like right after. Right. Continue to do that when they are continuing to do the positive, like that desired behavior, so you can get that outcome.
You're reinforcing the behavior so that you can get the outcome that you want. You're adding something in. My example, do you want to give an example?
This is something I'm kind of going through in therapy with my son, so, like, when he doesn't like to do therapy, so to increase, I guess, the chances of him complying with the therapist, I allow him to play on the Switch for an hour each night. He actually comes back and the therapist tells me that he has respected her or he follows directions on the first prompt. There's like certain goals he has to do in order to get the reward.
Yes. Perfect example. I'm adding something in that you want. I want to play on the Switch in order to reinforce the behavior that I want. I want you to go to therapy, right? Another one too is like, a lot of times it becomes about food. Okay.
Most times, yeah.
God, it's horrible, right?
Or iPad, or.
Yeah, electronics and food. Electronics and food. Okay. But right when a little kid is potty training, when my son goes on the potty, we give him an M&M, right? Because M&M saves the world. Okay. Right? Why? Because he wants an M&M. He loves M&M. So when he does the behavior that I want, I give him an M&M. And then now he sits on the potty and says M&M, like even before he goes, because he knows that's right. But I'm encouraging the behavior to get him to sit on the potty, right? Maybe my husband does the same thing. I have to give him M&M. No, just joking, right? That's one of the problems with behavioral therapy is that we are focused on external behavior. Okay? When we get to motivational interviewing folks will be like, hey, we want to draw up internal behavior. We want them to sit on the potty because it's the right thing to do, not because we're getting an M&M, right? Okay, well, we start somewhere, okay? But if my 40-year-old husband was still needing M&M's to go potty, then we're in trouble, okay? So we gotta kind of revise that slightly.
What's funny is like every time your kid like throughout life goes to the bathroom, he like craves an M&M.
Yeah, that would be horrible, wouldn't it? Yeah. Although we teach this stuff, like, when my daughter was really young, she's like the encourager of the world, okay? She already knows she wants to be a social worker. She's the encourager of the world. So she would go to the playground and she would go down the slide, but mostly she sat at the bottom of the slide, and when kids came down, she was like, great job! And she encouraged the kids that were coming down the slide, because that was a reinforcer for her. She craved that and loved that. That part went to Atlantic City. She went into the bathroom with my husband, and somebody went to the bathroom, and she stood right next to the urinal and said, great job! My husband was like, oh my God, I can't handle it, and ran out of the bathroom. Again, she's getting the positive reinforcement, and she was just sharing it with everyone else, right? Okay, lots of potty stories, right? But they're good examples of how this works, right? Okay, all right, so positive reinforcement, again, we're adding something in because we want the behavior to continue, okay? All right, negative reinforcement is that we're taking something out because we want the behavior to continue. And this is where people get confused oftentimes. We're taking something out to encourage behavior. Does anybody have an example of that? Get it straight in your head.
I have one. Like a kid who gets to skip class for a little bit because they were doing really well in class, or they really like going to the therapist's office, so they get to skip class and go to the therapist's office.
Yeah, they're doing really well, so they get to have something taken away, right? I.e. class, right? Okay, so in my household, oftentimes if we see some really great behavior that we like, we might take chore away. You don't have to empty the dishwasher tonight, because you're awesome. Or because you don't have any water. So whatever, that's fine, Vicky. Right, we're taking something that they don't like away as a reinforcement for the behavior that we like. So I might take away a chore when you've been kind to your siblings. Or I might, you get an A on a test, I might take away bedtime or extend bedtime to you get an extra hour. Right, I'm taking away the bedtime to encourage the behavior.
Sorry, I have a lot to say about this.
Good, I'm glad.
I'm sorry. So it's kind of like when a client is kind of progressing in that treatment. So like, for example, if I had a kid who was nonverbal, they used the communication book, and then they started, making vocalizations, that would be a good time to like decrease utilizing that communication book, for their treatment. There's like certain populations that this works like really well for, so that's why for kids who have autism, this works like extremely well because they have a lot of things that they need to kind of focus on in the external environment. Also internal, but
Yeah. Yep, yeah, absolutely. The thing we need to be careful of is that we don't get these mixed up.
Right.
Because what happens sometimes, and I see this all the time with like ITs at school, is they will actually input something thinking that it's a reinforcement. They're doing a positive reinforcement, but the kid doesn't like it. The kid doesn't want that thing you're adding in, and then it actually backfires on you. Or, we'll talk about this when we get to the punishment one too, is sometimes we get that mixed up, which is just tragic. Okay, so the other piece is extinction, okay? This is the technique of where we withhold any like emotional response, behavioral response, and we just allow the child to do what they're doing, whatever their behavior is. Because the idea is that if we stop responding, they're no longer getting any reinforcement at all or punishment to continue the behavior. So then hopefully the behavior will no longer be needed because they're not getting what they're trying to get out of it and will eventually stop, okay? Great example of this, I know everybody gives this example, but is a parent who's trying to get their child to sleep through the night, like you ignore them, which is much harder for the parent. But if you ignore that behavior, eventually the child will stop crying at night and trying to get your attention and sleep through the night, okay? Unless something else is going on, right? But we ignore that behavior and oftentimes it'll go away, okay? This is oftentimes more challenging for the person who's implementing this plan, i.e. the parents and the teachers, or whoever it be, than for the person who's experiencing the behavior, because it is very challenging to watch this extinction process. Oftentimes parents get concerned with this because there's always an extinction burst, right? The behavior gets worse before it stops. And so that, like, oftentimes parents will come in and be like, you're wrong, it got worse, like, hold the course. Next week when you come back, I'm sure you're gonna be there. But for now, sometimes it looks like it gets worse before it gets better. Can anyone else think of a different example of that? Yes.
I'm not sure, like, long-term perspective, but like, you must do a placement at some on pediatric psych unit, and they tell parents all the time for self-harm behavior, that because of the behavior, do not overreact to it, and like, don't overly focus on it, because it feels good.
Which you can imagine is extremely challenging for parents, right? My kid is cutting, like, let's hope they don't accidentally kill themselves, right? So sometimes there's balance in that, but yeah, absolutely. The more we positively reinforce it, we add in our attention, we're inadvertently reinforcing behavior that can keep it going, right? Okay, were you gonna say something?
No, I wasn't.
Okay, all right, okay, jump in when you want to. All right, so positive punishment, remember it's positive, so we're adding something in, but it's a punishment to shut the behavior down, okay? Adding in to shut the behavior down. Any good examples of that? Yeah, no, it's exactly what people think oftentimes, is that you are adding in a negative punishment, spanking, to shut the behavior down. What was that?
Adding like girl chores, like going outside, mowing the lawn, breaking, like doing heavy duty type things,
Yes.
or,
So that's a great example, and we have to be careful of that, because if you told my son that he had to go mow the lawn because he did something that we didn't like, he'd be like, yeah, buddy, woohoo, get on the riding mower, I'm good to go, right? That would be a positive reinforcement instead. So we have to be careful with that. But yes, you're exactly right. I think that my one daughter always wants to be helping, and sometimes you're just like, go relax. So now whenever she says, can I help? Can I jump in and do that for you? We say, you know what? No, you can't, but you could go rake the leaves. She's like, no, I don't want to do that, right? So that right there is like, if you ask me again, that's what we actually say, not so nicely. We're like, ask me again, and you're gonna have to rake the leaves. We're adding in positive, a punishment, because she'll want to do it. And guess what? It stops that behavior immediately. She finds something else she wants to do. It's amazing. Was someone going to say over here?
Oh, I had a kid last year that would ask for big class, so we pulled him, but he'd come and do more work. So we add on extra work. So, okay, you're doing one sheet now, three for you in my office.
Yeah.
Do you still want to come?
Yeah. Did it work?
Yeah.
Yeah, right?
You guys like together.
Adding more in. Yeah. So here's the thing, though, is that, like, we're talking about how we have to be very careful that we don't get this mixed up. I was recently working on an IEP where the kid he's on the spectrum, very high functioning, but every time he would lash out, like flip a bookcase or kick the teacher, I know I say it like, oh, no big deal, right? Anyway, he would lash out like that. They would pull him from class and let him call his mom so that his mom could calm him down. Hold on a second. That's reinforcing his behavior, because, hey, now he's doing it just because he wants to talk to his mom in the middle of the day. And then we do a video call so that he could see his mom and talk to his mom. And they're like, well, we're stopping the behavior by calming him down. No, you are not. No, what you're doing is you're teaching him that if I want to talk to my mom and I miss her, then all I have to do is run over to my teacher, kick her in the shin. And guess what? I get to talk to mom. Okay? And then they wonder why it's not working. Hello. Just getting these basic concepts down can do a world of good for people. Okay? All right. Negative punishment, we're taking something out to stop the behavior. These ones are great. Come on. Parents, this is where we hover.
no video games,
Oh,
staying in the bed
I'm
all
gonna take your
day.
cell phone away. I'm gonna take, I don't take your cell phone. I take your charger away. It's over. Right? I'm horrible. Yeah.
No, we just, if there's go-gurt tubes left in the living room, stuff between the couch, it costs them a quarter. Like,
Yeah.
a lot of money and allowance.
Right. We have a no dish left behind policy. I told you my brother's a Navy SEAL, so it's no dish left behind. You know, but whatever. Yeah, right. There's always a negative, something we add in, right? Or negative, we take it away, right? So we might take away cell phones, chargers, turn the Wi-Fi off. Yeah, I haven't done that. Because I need it. But, right, we're taking something away in order to shut down the behavior. Okay, so we've come up with some good ones for kids. Let's think about that. If we're doing like couples therapy, okay? Do we ever see these behaviors going on? I'll give you one of my favorites. Couple comes in, we're gonna do a man and a woman, right? It can go any way you want, but this is the one I get all the time. is that the husband has been asked to do something and didn't do it. So what does the wife do? Maybe she, oh, look, you sound like an empowered woman. You're like, I just did it myself.
Oh, yeah.
Right, right.
Yeah.
Right, I got it. There you go. It's not the answer I was looking for, but very good point, very good point. I love it. Yeah, that's backfired. Okay. What happens? The woman starts nagging. Right? She's adding in something you don't want, right? So what is he doing? She's using positive punishment. I'm going to add in behavior that you do not want. Stop your behavior of you not doing what I want you to do. Does that make sense? It's like a lot of double negative, but it works. So this husband is like, hey, I don't know why she's nagging so much. And she's like, hey, I don't want her not following through with what you said you're going to do. And they get stuck in this cycle where she's adding in negative consequences for him and not getting the response that she wants. And then he's doing the same thing back over with her, and then they're not communicating at all. Yeah? Make sense? So what we can do is help people break that down and see the stimuli response, what's going on in all of that. And then we can help communicate better in order to reverse that, okay? So oftentimes I have couples do behavioral contracts. This is awesome, right? I want the garage cleaned out. Okay. So never do we just say, well, I'll get it done. We say, when will it be done? And then we make a very specific timeline for when that particular thing that is causing them difficulties is going to be done. And then the other person has to agree not to nag or do whatever behavior it is that is upsetting the other one until that date. I'm not going to ask you about the garage for 2 whole weeks. It actually kills that person, but they don't ask for 2 whole weeks, right? Because now they've learned to communicate of, okay, you're not going to nag me about it as long as I get it done by this date that I've agreed on. And now, heaven forbid that day passes. It doesn't get done, then we have to renegotiate it and figure out what the resistance is. But that works oftentimes. It works great with parents and kids too. Like, I'm not going to nag you about that if the child is able to cognitively do that. I'm not going to nag you about this. Like, we know that it needs to be done. Here's the behavioral, like, here's the chore chart. That's exactly what it is. I'm not going to nag you about it. I'm taking the emotion out of it. You know these things need to be done and that there's going to be some kind of punishment if it doesn't get done.
And do these types of conditioning for individuals who aren't cognitively aware, for example, like people with dementia or Alzheimer's, can you utilize these or no, typically not?
Yeah, I think there has to be a certain level of ability to cognitively follow. But that being said, I think that because this is sort of like ground level, you really can develop a treatment plan that helps reinforce the behavior or stop the behavior with the family involved. So you might have a family member who can't think it through, is really not aware, but we're all wired to know consequences. So I don't have to have a lot of insight into why I do something if I get a consequence I don't like, right? If I touch the stove and it's hot, even if I'm not cognitively all there, and maybe if I have dementia, I'm still probably going to pull my hand away, right? Because the consequence is I'm getting burned. So if everybody is creating that uniform response, then we probably can still do it. Okay. So another example, I worked with a couple who the wife had been married previously, and her husband had a pornography addiction. But she didn't know about it through most of their marriage, and then found out about it. And what would always happen is they would go to bed at night together, and in the middle of the night, he would get up, go downstairs, watch porn, And she would be upstairs in bed and wake up and he wouldn't be there. And so they eventually, this is before I ever met them, got divorced and she got remarried. And her husband happened to really like getting midnight snack. Okay? Stimuli response people. So what happened was that they came into therapy because she was lashing out at him, like angry, frustrated, irritated with him all the time, and had no idea why, right? But what was really happening is every night they would go to bed together, and in the middle of the night, her husband would go downstairs and get a midnight snack. That's the stimuli. Same pattern. He wasn't watching porn. He was, eating Cheerios. Okay? She was in bed, and all of a sudden would have an emotional reaction to the stimuli, and he would come back and she'd be pissed. And it wasn't until we were able to connect the dots and realize, wait, hold on a second. That he's not watching porn, but you're upset about it because this is a stimuli response pattern that you have had. So bringing awareness to that, and thank goodness this husband was just like, oh my gosh, like I would never want you to think that. That's not what. So he started bringing his granola bar to bed with him. And so then she got to sleep with like a little squirrel who was in the middle of the night. You'd be irritated about that, like you just push that, right? But I'm not getting out of his bed because that was her stimuli, right? So sometimes in therapy, we change the stimuli, i.e. he decided that he was gonna change the way that he was doing something so that she didn't get triggered and have that same response. And sometimes we can bring it into awareness and just be like, okay, well, that's not what's happening. But she needed that. She needed him to stay in that bar and then for every time, right? Behavioral therapy. Sometimes it's that simple of just figuring out what the trigger is, which sounds easy, but oftentimes it's not. So uncovering the trigger so that we can change the response. Yeah.
Would a new trigger be introduced though? Like I don't think all the crumbs like that.
Could be. It could be. Yeah. We're going to talk more about that when we talk about this classic conditioning. But yeah. Yeah. This life, right? This is a bunch of triggers. Okay. Any questions about any of this? You got the positive and the negatives down? So here's what I'll say here too, is that, again, we hover in negative punishment. I'm going to change this behavior by implementing something you don't like. That's what we think of with punishment, usually. Now, here's the unfortunate part, is if you look at most of the research, all of it will say that if you hover in reinforcement, you will be able to change behavior better. Okay? So that's the challenge. Another example of this, you tell me which one of these this is. My daughter, my oldest daughter, when she was in second grade, she was like the best teacher of all time. Okay, loved her. She worked in special ed, and this was the first year that she had an integrated classroom, and so she was rooted in behavioral therapy, and then came into the classroom and implemented all of those things, and she had the best behaved class ever. And this is what she would do, is that every student had a little treasure map on their desk, okay? And it had like little spots on the treasure map. And if you made it from the beginning to the little treasure during the day, then you got to get something out of the treasure box at the end of the day, okay? So the way that you moved your way along, she had like a little dry erase, and she would come over and she'd make little X's on your little path to the treasure box, okay? But she only used positive reinforcement. So never did she take X's away. And what she would do is that if Ashley was sitting here and she was behaving, and little Sammy was sitting here and he wasn't behaving, what she would do is she would walk over and say, Ashley, you are doing such a great job. And she would give her a little X movement towards the treasure box. And what do you think Sam did? Social learning, that's part of it. Sam was like, wait, what? I didn't get an X. I didn't get an X. And all of a sudden, Sam's behavior would change. Because she wanted an X. He would snap right into the right behavior, and then she'd come over and reinforce it with an X. She never had anybody that was misbehaving in the class. Because they all had this like right in front of them all the time. Okay. So the other piece of this we have to be really careful of is sometimes we can flood people or they become so desensitized to this stuff that it no longer is effective. Okay? So I don't know, do we have teachers in the room? Anyone ever? No, okay. Well, so for those of you who are in schools or whatnot, they have like the stoplight, right? Again, it's supposed to be a reinforcement, but really ends up being a punishment sometimes. And so it gets confusing to the kids as to what they're supposed to be. Like, it's a punishment, it's a reinforcement. So if you're good, you get to move your little clip up to green. If you're bad, then you have to move it down to yellow. And then if you continue that behavior, you get to move down to red. So this can be effective for kids, but sometimes I think they become desensitized to it because now they've added another color. I don't know about you, I've been at stoplights lately and there's no other color, but they add now like purple and blue. So like purple is like the coming of Christ, okay? If you were that good, that you're being sainted when you get wherever you're going, if you're going somewhere. Like no one's ever purple, ever. And then like blue is you are probably getting the next Nobel Peace Prize. That's how good you are. So kids then, because the goal is too high, people throw it out. Like I don't even care if I'm on yellow now because I'm never getting a purple. I'm never getting a green because it's just too high. And so I think sometimes we see that happening in the classroom, and so we can help folks who are in the classroom, like reorder that. Like let's make reinforcements, and not punishment. And let's make the goals very specific because if they get too large, you're like, I'm never gonna get there, forget it, I won't try. And kids will shut down. How often do you think that happens in relationships? Same thing, like making specific goals, even for relational goals, needs to be specific and attainable, because if not, then we're ending up just desensitizing people and they don't even care anymore. Like it's too big, too big. And unless someone's got a particular growth mindset where they love challenges, they're not gonna try. So sometimes in behavioral therapy, we have to look at that, okay? Just recently had a kid come in, and actually it was a clinician I was supervising, and she had a kid come in, and the parent is just like, wants this kid to always be on the top of their game. Like, they're not allowed to take a shower that's more than 5 minutes long. They have to always have their room perfect. They have to have their homework done within the first half hour of being home. They've got, like, it was so rigid that this kid finally was just like, whatever, I'll break all the rules then, because none of these are, like, it's too much. So we have to work with a parent to say, okay, what's reasonable? And we need to have reinforcements that actually will help motivate behavior as opposed to just shutting down, right? Make sense? Okay, so I know I'm a little bit all over the place, but I want to give you these. How many of you have ever worked with SMART goals before? Yeah, right? Everybody loves SMART goals. So I printed you off a little SMART goal sheet that I particularly like. It's got all those questions with it. I use this with clients all the time. It's helping them be able to come up with SMART goals so that this doesn't become so overwhelming to them. They're like, why do I bother trying? Because I'm never going to meet my goal. So we make them really specific and measurable. Okay. So here's our SMART goals, just as a review because I think this is important, especially when we're talking about using these operant conditioning concepts. Really important. So our goal has to be specific. It can't just be like, sort of, we get people come in all the time and they're like, I'm unhappy in my job. I think I need change. And you're like, okay, let's break that down. What does that look like? Or some of you have probably even done this where you make goals and you're like, I want to lose weight. Like I can go on for the next 50 years. I don't know when I've achieved it, right? Where I'm going with that. I'm going to give you my own example to walk you through. Right after I finished my PhD, I thought I need another impossible goal because I like impossible goals. I'm one of those weirdos. What would be as impossible as getting a PhD since I did that? And I thought I'm going to run a 5K. Look at me. Do I look like I like to run? No. So I made that my goal, that I was going to run a 5K just so that I could check it off the list and say I did it. So it was very specific that I was going to run a 5K. All right, so specific that I actually registered for a particular 5K, right? So that then I had a financial investment like 6 months later, right? So I printed off the couch potato to 5K. Anybody ever done that plan before? It's horrible. Really, like that is not right. And I got my best friend to do it with me because I drag everyone I know into all of my fun endeavors. So 4 o'clock in the morning, every morning for 6 months, we got up and ran. It was a horrible time in my life. But it was very specific. It was very measurable, right? Like we knew what we were doing. Trust me. When we got done with that 5K, we knew how measurable it was. Okay, that was a long, long 5K. And also, just point out culture. Did you know there's like a whole culture, a running culture? How many of you are runners? Really? Okay, like people pee while they're running and they just keep going. Like this is like, I was like holding it and I'm like, I gotta find a porta potty. And they're like, no, you don't. Just go, keep on going. And I'm like,
Yeah. Yeah, like state. I know people that did it like 2 or 3 times during a state race because of the nerves. Oh, yeah. I cried after every race I ran, without fail, like sobbed. I was so overwhelmed finishing a race. And it was normal.
I was like, my sneakers have been peed upon. Yeah, like there's a whole new culture in that. I learned a lot of it.
Like my peas are 3 Yeah.
Why hydrating though beforehand? Because like.
Have you had children?
No.
Something about like jumping on trampolines too. It seemed like a great idea when I was 20, not so much after 5 children. It was very miserable. Yeah, and there's a whole nother culture that's going on that I'm in awe of, quite frankly. And okay, so was it achievable? It has to be achievable. So this is on the cusp of my achievability. Not quite sure it was achievable, but being crazy that I am, I decided I'd try it, right? And so we made it more achievable by, of course, rubbing in my best friend. And also, like, I mean, every morning we were out there. So it seems like it could be achievable. Is it relevant? Is it something that was good for us that we could possibly do? Yes. It was somewhat good for us. It was actually very good for us. We didn't like it, but it was good for us. And it was time bound, right? There was a deadline. That's why I had to register for it, because if I hadn't registered, I could be like, I'm going to do a 5K someday. And that someday could have been like 5 years, 10 years. It could have still been on the list. But when you say, this is when I'm going to achieve it, then it's good, because then when you know when it's over. And I was oh so aware when it was over. I took my sneakers, my feet on sneakers, and said, never again am I ever doing this again. Thank you for the memory. I've achieved my goal. Now it runs in. I remember it. But that's how you do a SMART goal, right? You don't just say, someday I think I want to do a 5K, right? Or better yet, I want to learn to run. And I'd be like, I'll run when you're chasing me, and I achieve my goal, right? That's not what we're doing. Very specific, timely, measurable, okay, and within our wheelhouse of possibility. And that one is a little pushing sometimes, but that's okay. All right? Okay. All right, so here we go. Now we're going to move on to classic conditioning. This is really based on the principle of learning, okay? This is that stimuli response. We need to take a break. Let's take a break. We'll do this when we get back from the break. Okay, so we're going to talk a little bit about classic conditioning. We're going to stop short of cognitive behavioral. We're going to do that next week. And then, of course, we have to watch Stan. See how this goes with Stan. Okay? Classic conditioning, hopefully, like, this is not the first time you've heard this, right? No, like Pavlov's dogs, everybody so aware. Ring a bell, give the food, the bell's neutral. But eventually, after you keep giving the food, the dog salivates to the bell. Stimuli response, right? What we've been talking about? Stimuli response. Why is this important when we start talking about counseling and therapy? Because oftentimes we pair a response to something that's a neutral stimuli. And then all of a sudden we're having an anxiety or emotional response to something because we have inadvertently paired the stimuli and the response. So I'm going to give you an example. A lot of times I do dosing with people, okay? So maybe they're grieving, that's sort of the area that I work in a lot. And so they're grieving. And so what we'll do is we'll say, hey, we want you to dose your grief, okay? It doesn't have to be grief, we dose things all the time. But what I want you to do is set an alarm for 10 minutes. And for 10 minutes, you're going to be angry, think about your loss, whatever the issue is, for 10 minutes, like let it rip. You can scream, you can yell, you do whatever you want, okay? And then at the end of 10 minutes, you're going to stop and go do something else. That's dosing, okay? This is awesome because it teaches people that they have the power to shut down, start and stop their emotions and what they're thinking about. Stopping is great. But we always tell people when you're dosing and doing your 10 minutes of what have you, don't watch TV, don't be eating, don't, read a book, don't, whatever it may be, don't do anything except for focus on dosing whatever it is that you're doing, okay? Make sense? Because what happens sometimes is if we don't tell them that, is that our brain, classic conditioning, will pair together whatever they're doing with the emotional reaction that they're having at that moment. So then we see people who have come in and they say, I can't eat dinner. Whenever I start sitting down to dinner, I have this intense emotional reaction. Okay. To me, I go, okay, somewhere along the line, the brain has made the connection and now taken a neutral stimuli, connected it with some sort of experience, and now you're having a reaction to that every time. You have paired something together. Then we have to unpair them, okay? Hard stuff. And sometimes things that we don't even realize that we have put together, okay? Example of that, sorry, I give a lot of family examples, but like I said, they're a little petri dish. When I was pregnant, when my twin was in and out of the ICU, And, shoot, what's that, now I forgot the show. The show, where they, American Idol. There's so many different ones now that I couldn't, American Idol was in their final thing, and I was like, I couldn't do anything, because I was just like in the hospital, like trying not to die, and, I would watch American Idol. So I got home after having the twins, and my husband turned on American Idol, and I was like started crying and sobbing, like I had paired together, like I'd never once watched American Idol again. Never. So I was like abruptly stopped, no more. Because something had gotten paired in that feeling of overwhelmed and hopelessness, that then, like, that was the trigger. It became the trigger, right? If I cared about it enough, I could stop. But I just never watched it again. And it's amazing to me that when I see, like, my kids go, Mom, did you ever see this show or this? And they'll show me a little episode. I'll have an emotional reaction just simply because it's paired together, okay? How that works is that that's oftentimes what's happening when our clients come in and they're having an emotional reaction. If we start thinking in this stimuli response way, then we might be able to see where they've paired something together that we need to unpair, and we need to teach them some coping skills to be able to be in that moment. Like if I wanted to watch American Idol, I absolutely could. But I might have to do some of my own coping skills while I'm in it, right? I might have to do some deep breathing to calm me down so that the physiological response that I have would change, okay? There's something called muscle memory, right? Have we heard about this? Yeah. So when I was doing yoga training for therapy, it's really interesting because oftentimes even using a certain muscle in your body will elicit an emotional response. Crazy, right? But this happens all the time. So I went to the Trauma Institute up in Boston. They have amazing, their trauma conference every year. If you're really interested in that, I highly suggest it. It's great. I went up there and had a woman that had been treated for trauma. She had been sexually abused for a very long time. And she came in because she could no longer walk. She couldn't walk. Physiologically, she could walk, she was fine. But those muscles had like literally shut down. Every time she uses those muscles, she just stopped walking because they were associated with the trauma that she had experienced. And so they started doing yoga with her, where she could learn to be mindful, shut down the anxiety response, right? In different yoga positions to activate those muscles in a safe environment for her. Within 6 months, she started walking, and she was no longer in a wheelchair. But it was muscle memory. They weren't, like, her muscles were fine. There was nothing wrong with her muscles. It was muscle memory that she would become so flooded that basically what we're talking about is a conversion disorder, but that she could not even use those muscles without becoming emotionally flooded, and so her brain just shut it down. But through doing mindfulness, by bringing the use of those muscles back in a safe place, she was able to overcome that. Incredible. Okay? I was working with another gentleman that was in my office, and he used to be in special forces, so he has really quick reflexes, like super, like, I don't know, some kind of like, crazy guy, like, I don't know, Superman. And he's sitting at the desk, and he has sunglasses on the corner of the desk, and we're talking, and he accidentally swipes them off as he's talking. And before they even hit the ground, he caught them. Like, lightning fast, right? He was like, bam, got him, right? I didn't even see it happen, but the thing is that 5 minutes later, he was in a full-fledged emotional response because he used the muscle that he was accustomed to using when he was in the special forces, and the trauma that was associated with that So he went from perfectly fine, dropped the glasses, and 5 minutes later is having a huge emotional reaction and has no idea what stimulated that because we weren't even going there. Muscle memory, that's what we're talking about. Again, there's a pairing of a response that we can break that response, but we have to know that it's there in order to first look at that stimuli response and then say, okay, now we're going to intervene in that equation and shut down the anxiety response and teach them to be in a safe place to experience it, that they can tolerate it, and then eventually it'll unpair itself. Right? Make sense? Okay. I think I had anything else to say there. Okay, so social learning theory, this is one of the other pieces. We sort of have, like, when we talk about behavioral therapy, we have waves, as they like to call them, where we have, like, the wave of behavioral therapy, we have the wave of, like, social learning theory type stuff, then we had a wave of cognitive behavioral therapy, which we'll talk about next week, and now we're sort of in this, like, mindfulness wave, where we're incorporating the mindfulness into CBT and behavioral therapy. So we've got like DBT and acceptance and commitment-based therapy, EMDR, all of those are like the fourth wave, if you will, of behavioral therapy, because they're all rooted in observable behavior, shutting down physiological responses, looking at things that are paired together, but also looking at this sequence of stimuli response and, stimuli cognition response. But social learning theory would say that we're all born with a blank slate and that we learn both normal and abnormal behavior. Right there, does anybody want to argue? Yeah?
Is any behavior normal or abnormal in and of itself? I mean, what is normal is based on cultural expectations and other aspects of personhood. Not just can't be like not two dichotomies, like
Right.
very spectrum.
Yeah, definitely. There's a spectrum there. Good point.
In that respect, I agree with social learning theory because like babies don't know like the difference between other babies based on their race, but racial construct, that's all like a learned thing, a societal thing.
Yeah,
That's something we
absolutely.
learn, yeah.
Yep. Learned behavior. It's like across all of the systems, right, that we have in our lives. Yeah.
Bringing me back to, like my first psychology class, where we talk about nature versus nurture, and we start to get into this debate argument, but like when we start to look at this perspective, it's like, yes, both. Yes. How you, form and come to be as an individual, like as you said, society, societal construct and stuff.
Right.
But like, and I'm thinking about it as like, both, nature versus nurture, so.
Yeah. I think it's interesting because part of this is that, because there's so many different elements to this, but when we start looking at things like depression and anxiety, we may be predisposed by our own biology to experience some of those things. We know that to be true. But our environment and how we learn things from other people also impacts the way that whether or not that predisposition ever sort of rears its head. So it is very much the nature versus nurture that we have to think about, because that's not necessarily the case, like what you're saying with like race and culture and religion and all of those things. We very much learn those based on our social environment. But things like, biases, but there are other things that are biologically, like depression and anxiety and schizophrenia and some of those things that have a biological element to it as well. That doesn't mean that even if you're predisposed that you're going to experience that. It just means that there's a possibility, there's a risk for it. Yeah. Okay. So, look, you just kind of said all that already. Thank you. So our environment, personal factors, such as our beliefs, perceptions, and interpretations, we're going to talk a lot more about that next week when we talk about cognitive behavioral therapy, and our individual behavior and, and how we learn from everyone around us. It's funny because we think of behavioral therapy as being so very different than psychodynamic therapy, but can you see the thread that's pulled through, particularly from like Adler, where he started looking at, we can't understand personality without the social context, because we're learning that. We're learning misbeliefs about the rules that we need to abide by, and then maybe we correct them, or maybe we keep abiding by them when they don't function very well anymore. You can see that in this, even though it's kind of very different schools of thought. Okay. I'm gonna pass over here, just because when we get to cognitive behavior, we're gonna loop back around to some of this. But I wanted to talk a little bit about these basic assumptions, and then I'm gonna give you this basic ID. Everybody familiar with basic ID? It's like sort of borrowing from, I always want to call him Wallace. I don't know why. I like it better. But this idea of multimodal therapy, which again is rooted in this cognitive behavioral stuff, and how we do a really good assessment with people to understand where they're coming from. So as I'm passing this out, let's talk about these basic assumptions. Abnormal behavior is not necessarily seen as an illness, but rather a problem in living. We have some sort of stimuli response that's happening that's causing us to respond in a way that would be outside of normal limits, whatever that is, right? Different for each of us based on our culture and our upbringing. There we go. Okay. All behavior, normal and abnormal, is learned and can be treated through a behavioral process. Anybody have issue with that? Think we could use behavioral therapy for everything? Okay. I agree. Yeah, I mean, here's the thing is that sometimes we are interfering with a stimuli response. Sometimes we're avoiding a trigger. It really depends on the person and what we're going to intervene with. I always like to, folks will tell me, they'll be like, hey, I get really anxious when I go to the grocery store and have to wait in line for a really long time. Like, anybody not really like waiting in line? Yeah. And my first response is always, don't go to the grocery store at 5 o'clock after work. Rocket science. Some triggers we can avoid. Now, we don't want to paint ourselves in a box and make it so that now we can't, like, function and do all these things. Like, either we can work on tolerating it, we can work on eliminating it. And sometimes it's okay to eliminate a trigger, okay? Or minimize a trigger if we need to. Sometimes it's just problem solving. Sometimes it's more than that. We're always focused on the current determinants of behavior rather than going back into the past. We already kind of said this, but I'm not really so interested other than if the behavior that we're working on right here and now has been paired with something from a historical situation, right? Like the gentleman who was in our special forces. Maybe I need to know a little bit about that, but I'm not going back to his childhood and did he have trust issues in the oral stage? I don't care. What I care about is the stimuli response, the behavior that's right in front of me. And this is one of the reasons why behavioral therapy is so very researched, right? If we're looking at observable behavior, it's a lot easier to research it because I can count it up. I can say, hey, this is how many times this person did this. Now we did this intervention, and now they've done it this many times. And I can see the difference in the behavior because it's all observable. We're not saying, hey, let's measure the quality of the transference reaction here, right? It's all observable behavior. Behavioral therapy also is very tailored to the individual and their specific issues that they're coming in for, the problems that they want to work on, which makes it work very well with many different cultures because it is designed to be individualistic. We're not trying to paint with a broad brush and say, this works for everyone. We're really looking at the person and what they need within their environment, with their social learning in mind, their conditioning in mind, specific to that person. Okay. I already mentioned the scientific method. So what do we do? Along with techniques of the operant conditioning, right, we might implement a plan where we look deeper at positive and negative reinforcement and positive and negative punishment, extinctions, and so forth. We might also look at relaxation training, like the stuff we were doing before, the progressive muscle relaxation, deep breathing, things like that. We also might work on desensitization. Again, what we're trying to do is impact the stimuli in our reaction to the stimuli. So we might teach desensitization. Again, this is where we would possibly expose somebody to a stimuli, and then we would bring them back to a place of relaxing, and then let them be exposed to the stimuli again until the point where they can tolerate the stimuli without having the physiological reaction. Much of trauma treatment that we do now has some kind of prolonged exposure, whether it's through talking and creating a narrative about the trauma that they've experienced. Most of the time, we're not going to actually put them in close proximity to the stimuli. Again, we do that with phobias and things like that, right? I'm gonna let you think about a spider. How many spider lovers do we have here? No? Okay. This morning, there was a spider that ran at me when I was in the bathroom, and I thought that was the big news for the morning. So I was super excited until I flushed and there was no water. And then I was like, I don't even care about the spider anymore. Like, that's not even news. But we had these ginormous spiders in our house. Yeah. I said, it's so big. And we were all like, oh. But yeah, and he ran at me. So what we would do is, things like that box right next to me. Think of trying to get away from the dog. I don't like spiders. So desensitization is where we are, maybe we're thinking about a spider. Maybe that's all we can tolerate. We think about the spider, and then we do some deep breathing and we relax, shut down the physiological response. Then maybe we look at a picture of a spider, and then we relax. And then maybe we watch a video of a spider that's actually moving because that ups the ante, right? And then maybe after we can control our reactions, we might go to the zoo and see a spider. That's a real one. And who knows, we might even, if you're really vested in working on this phobia, you might actually like hold a spider or something like that, right? We are stepwise increasing the intensity of the stimuli while continuing to use the relaxation so that the physiological response will slowly fizzle out. Make sense? Okay, we do this in trauma as well, except that we don't actually put people back on the battlefield, right? We just let them talk about their narrative, and in some way they're then re-experiencing it. And so they might do a trauma narrative, and then we work on the relaxation piece. We work on correcting some core beliefs and things like that. And then then we go back to exposure again and see how their narrative has changed. Okay. What questions do you have about this?
So we kind of talked a little bit about like, veterans just now, but like for individuals who have, undergone like sexual assault and those kinds of cases. And I'm gonna have to be working with clients who experience that. How would you kind of incorporate that into working with that type of trauma?
Yeah, so they're gonna do the exact same thing. Oftentimes they do a narrative about their trauma. The thing I would say is first, safety is always first. So we teach, creating a safe space, talking to them about like, when to recognize when they're not safe, right? And so that they have first that understanding. So like when we work with kids, we want to make sure that we're talking with them about like, where people should be allowed to touch them, what resources they have if they are uncomfortable around someone, where they can get help. And like, that's like, first off, trauma-focused CBT, we always start there. Oftentimes people come in, and this is kind of the unfortunate piece of when you're working with someone who has some sort of PTSD. They come in and they think, look, I just need to tell my story and then I'm gonna feel better, right? But then they avoid their story so oftentimes. So what happens is that folks will come in and they just wanna like, okay, you're the therapist, I'm gonna like verbally vomit this whole thing on you and then I'm gonna feel better. And we have to like close the bottle cap and be like, no, that's not what we're doing that yet. First, we need to get some skills in place for you to calm down, because if not, they're going to come in, they're going to tell you their entire story, they're going to feel completely vulnerable, and then they're never going to come back. And then they're going to leave to your office, and they're going to feel so emotionally vulnerable that if they can't cope with that, that's where we see that those people then are having more suicidal ideation, and they can't cope at all. We have to be very careful when people come in and they're like, hey, I've experienced the trauma. I always say, you know what, we're going to get to that, but for now, I just want to get to know some of your background history. I don't want that. And they're like, well, let me tell you what happened to me. And I say, you know what, they tell me, was it physical abuse, was it sexual abuse? No, sexual abuse. Okay, we're stopping there. I don't need to know any more about your trauma for today. And we slowly go into that, because I don't want them to start that until I know that they have the skills for me to be able to pull them back out, because if not, we're in big trouble.
Right, and it's so easy to say like, it wasn't your fault, and so kind of like, to them, like, we kind of talked about a few classes, it's like,
We invalidate their response.
Right, so it's also really important to kind of, remember not to do those sessions too. It's like, oh, it's okay,
Right.
like, it wasn't your fault. And it's kind of like, I've also seen it with past experience with clients, they kind of shut down, they don't want to see you again.
Right.
They don't.
Yeah.
And it happens.
Because you just validated everything that everyone else in their world said too. Like, why can't you get over this? You're okay, it's fine. You didn't do anything wrong.
To do some gentle redirecting before they have the appropriate skill set.
Yep, absolutely. But that's really important when we're talking about trauma. Now, it takes a little bit of a turn when we start talking about things like eye movement desensitization, or accelerated resolution therapy. So for some of you probably heard of these, yeah? Okay, so basically, first off, you have to be certified to do these. So it's not something you're gonna learn in this class and be like, hey, try that out. Not gonna happen. You have to do a certification to be able to do this. But basically what it's doing is that we have found that when people are moving their eyes, back and forth, systematically, and recalling a traumatic event that may have happened, particularly that they have sort of like pictures of in their minds that they can't seem to erase, that while we're doing exposure therapy with that and moving their eyes, it disconnects the somatic response that people have to the trauma. It disconnects it. So then it's not that they don't remember the trauma. They can remember the trauma, but they won't have the same somatic physiological response that they're having currently. So it disconnects it. And this is like, it's funny because when this first all came out, we were like, yeah, y'all are a bunch of class. Right? And then there was more and more research, and we were like, whoa, okay, maybe we need to look at this. And now it's evidence-based practice for trauma. So, and there's more stuff for like grief and depression all coming out, showing that this really does work. But it's a little bit like magic, right? Because what you're doing is you're rewiring someone's brain so that they don't have a somatic response to the memory of a trauma. Hence why you have to be certified to do it. Okay? But it is very unique. I've been certified in acceleration, I would say it wrong, accelerated resolution therapy. And I'll be darned, every time I do it with someone who's had trauma, they have, I mean, we're talking about within 45 minutes, they no longer are having anxiety responses to trauma. And this is trauma that has been treated with trauma-focused CBT, like they've just been resistant to anything, and then 45 minutes, and you're like, are you kidding me? Like, what just happened? And it's all about the neurophysiology of your brain. So pretty incredible, for what it's worth. Still makes me go, no, there's no way. Did I already tell you, when I did the training, there was a woman who came in to do the training, and she had a stroke. So she was on a lot of pain meds and things like that, so all sort of just like impacting her ability to function. But she had a stroke, so her gait was very unsteady. And she had a therapy dog with her. So she comes to training, and much of the training is actually like doing the different scripts and actually doing it. And so the instructor, who I was lucky enough to be trained with the person who developed it, Lacey, she came up and she said, are you willing to, let's do a session for you, for this woman, right? Because the idea is that our brain gets in these pathways of functioning and controlling our muscles and all of those things and our emotions. And if we can disrupt that, then sometimes our brain is like on autopilot, and we no longer, so like for her, she was no longer having pain. She no longer was having a stroke, but her brain was still overcompensating, causing her gait to be all over the place, right? But technically, if her brain rewired, she wouldn't need that symptom any longer because her brain had been rewired and would realize that she didn't need it. And we were all like, whatever, lady, you're crazy. So she sat down and she did a session for a half hour with this woman. And about 15 minutes into the session, her therapy dog that for 4 days had sat in her lap and never once gotten off her lap. This dog was trained well. 15 minutes into the session, jumped off her lap, walked around the room. Okay, therapy dogs don't do that. Walked around the room, looked around, sat in the corner, and left her side. The dog had never left her side. Like, there was some kind of weirdness going on there. Finished the session, and she said, stand up and walk across the room. She drew like a line with tape, walk across the room. She stood up and walked across the room perfectly fine. And we all were like, nah, it's not possible. Do it again. Because they had rewired something in her brain. Like, can I tell you what it was? No, I have no idea. But something in the somatic response, she no longer needed that symptom because her brain had rewired. Pretty crazy because Lainey, her name is Lainey, when she's doing it, she's like, will you videotape this? Like, tape it, because I think she's going to have a response. She's like, I don't know if it'll work or not, but let's try it. So I taped it. They used the tape that we taped on her cell phone at their national conference of this woman. So, like, she, like, just, I mean, within 5 minutes, she was no longer having uneven gait. How crazy is that? Now, we couldn't, like, therapy people. You know what I mean? So if there's something about this, and I think probably if you were in school like 10, 15 years from now, we're probably going to be teaching this more, not as just a certification, but as like practice that we want you to leave school with, because it just, I mean, I've done it, And again, it works really well with people who have like a mental picture in their head that's causing them anxiety, right? So a lot of times when people have experienced trauma, they will relive that trauma, and it's because they have a mental picture in their head. Their memory gets pulled up, and there's a mental picture. And this focuses in on disconnecting the somatic response to that particular mental picture. So if people are not necessarily having a mental picture, it might not work as well. But I mean, I've worked with people who have phobias of going over bridges, gone just like that. A girl, I think I'd mentioned before, who had slipped in a whitewater rafting and almost drowned. And 20 minutes later, she hasn't been able to go over bridges for like 3 months. She was fine. But again, disconnecting that stimuli response. I know, sounds kind of crazy.
What was that one called, the accelerated?
Resolution therapy. They go and they say art, and then everybody thinks art therapy. What are you doing? Okay. There's also a lot of social skills training that we do, and this makes sense, right? Because if we're talking about learned behavior, oftentimes we are intervening because people have learned skills that don't work so well for them, right? These are the folks who need to kind of learn this. I love assertiveness training because they need to learn like what's assertive, like here's my need, can you meet my needs? As opposed to aggressive behavior, you better do that. Or passive, like, okay, well, for so we can teach people the difference between each of those ways of communicating and how that impacts their ability to get their needs met. And that's really where anger management comes into, because our aggressive responses, we can learn to curb those by using good communication skills and recognizing our emotions and our triggers, recognizing when we're triggered. And then lastly is this mindfulness and acceptance and commitment-based therapy. If we have time, we're going to eat for midterm first. We might talk a little bit more about acceptance and commitment-based therapy. They use a lot of metaphors who are great for people. So instead of just like talking about how they're feeling and sort of learning to function even though you might be feeling a certain way, distress tolerance, okay? We use a lot of metaphors that help people start thinking in different ways. So we'll loop back around to that. So some other interventions, we model behavior. We role play. Our role, oftentimes as a therapist, is to teach people about these ways of learning, the operant conditioning. I teach people that so that we can start identifying how those are happening in their life or how maybe they need to happen in their life. When we talk about behavioral activation, which is the first part of cognitive behavioral therapy, we are setting up a reward system for people. If you set your SMART goal and you meet it, what's going to be the reward? If you have things that you enjoy doing and you commit to doing 2 of those because you know they're good for you in a week, and then you actually do them, let's set up a reward, right? Positive reinforcement. We teach people to be able to set up their own so they can positively reinforce their own behavior and then sort of set up the cycle to be more self-sufficient. Sometimes we work on communication skills and we role play those. That's always a lot of fun. Helping people, like, let's talk about aggressive communication. Like, let's give you a scenario. This is what happened. Now I'm going to be this person. You be yourself. Let's work it through and see how they communicate, and then help them rehearse and practice doing it in an assertive way. We're going to see that in the video. So sometimes we're teaching communication skills. We're helping model the behavior. in a lot of ways, we're shaping behavior that way. Okay. Makes sense? So here are the 5 domains of behavioral therapy. I also printed this off for you because it says it slightly differently. So let's just turn to the one I printed off for you. This is a basic ID. This is really a good assessment tool for us to be able to use when we're thinking about people's behavior, and realizing that we're not just, we're looking at observable behavior, but all of these elements are playing a part in it, okay? So if you think in basic ID, that is the behavior, how the person is acting, their daily behaviors, which could be increasing or decreasing to promote their quality of life. Okay. Their affect, how are they emotionally? What's going on with them? How the person feels. Again, even though we're looking at observable behavior, but for that woman who was being triggered by her husband getting out of bed to get a midnight snack, right? We weren't just looking at the fact that he was physically getting out of bed. We were looking at her emotional reaction. That was the trigger, but we want to look at her emotional reaction. What was going on? Well, she was irritated. She was frustrated with him. She was annoyed. We were looking at the affect part. What is the person physically feeling? That's the sensations. Again, when we're doing like the art or EMDR, we're always touching base. Like, where do you feel that in your body? If you're angry right now, you said that you're angry. Where are you feeling that, right? So, oh, my shoulders are really tense. Okay. All right, let's do a little bit of mindfulness. Like, let's breathe. Let's see if we can release a little bit of that mindfulness, using mindfulness to release some of the tension and the physical symptoms that you're experiencing. Imagery, what are they visualizing, any success or failure? You know, this reminds me of right here. Has anybody watched that Brene Brown Netflix special? What is it called? Someone's right. I forget what. But if you put Brene Brown in, what was that? Oh, yeah. Yeah, something is great. Yeah. Anyway, if you put in Brene Brown in Netflix, it'll pop up, and there's a thing that she has. But the imagery and like what we tell ourselves, like the story that we're telling ourselves, is often where we get tripped up. Right? So I use this intervention with people all the time, where I'll say, okay, like there's a reality of what's going on. Then there's the like, what are you telling? The story I'm telling myself is. Okay, so you know we do this all the time, and she talks about her husband and her having this interaction where she's talking about the story that she's telling herself, which is very different than his reality, and that's what was really playing into it. So, gosh, there's so many good examples of that. When we're in a situation and something happens, sort of like in reality and in the story that we're telling ourselves. I think this weekend I went shopping and I got a shirt and I came home and I showed my husband and he's like, oh. I'm responsible for that. Oh. Okay, so like I had to stop, and when you learn to stop and the other person knows what you're doing, you'd be like, okay, so you just said, oh, okay. But the story I just told myself was that you don't like it, that you don't really want me to wear it. And then he's looking at me like I got 5 heads, like, nah, that was like half burp, half O, like, I don't know, like, nothing but went through my mind. But see, when you can start putting it out there, to be like, this is the story I just told myself in response to your response right then you can shut it down, because instead I would probably have just been irritated with him, and returned it, maybe not. But you know what I mean? Like we change our behavior based on that interaction. Okay, cognitive, what the person is thinking. This is the internal dialogue. We're going to talk a lot more about that next week. Interpersonal, this is how we're our support systems and our external social influences and things that are going on. This is nice because it looks at the whole person, okay? And all the different systems that might be interacting there. And then also the biological, right? Are there health things going on? Is there medication or drugs or genetic stuff that's happening in this as well? Makes sense? It's a really nice little tool to use when we're assessing this from a behavioral perspective. Okay. So I'm going to stop there and we're going to watch this video of Stan. And hopefully this will bring it all together. You'll note in this how there's a lot of role play that goes on, okay? There's a lot of working on communication that goes on in this. So here you go, for one part.
This is behavior therapy in action as it applies to working with Stan. We're going to assume that this is the fourth session of behavior therapy. And what happened last week was Stan said that he would be willing to do homework. In this particular approach, we give a lot of homework collaboratively. And Stan said he was going to approach one of his professors, talk to his professor about his anxiety he was experiencing in class. And we start off the section by talking about, well, Stan, how did your homework go? What happened? Last week, I remember we ended off our session with you saying you really wanted to approach some of your professors because you're anxious in class and you're wondering what they think about you. You don't talk as much as you'd like to. And I remember giving you a homework assignment. And you were a little bit, I don't know if I'll do it. I just want to check and see how did that go. Well, I didn't do it. I thought that I could make an appointment with one of my teachers. But when the time came, I was sitting there, was in the class, and there was a line. So I just said, forget it. Yeah. So there's a line, long line. 2 people. 2 people. Okay. Yeah. I wonder what you told yourself when there were 2 people ahead of you. What did I tell myself? Well, I mean, she only has so much time. 2 people are already there. By the time I get up there, she'll be rushed and she'll be wanting to, head off to teach her next class or do whatever it is that she needs to do next. So I figured, I'll just wait until I can get her at a different time. Yeah. So how was it for you that you didn't carry out the homework assignment? Well, I was a little, I thought you were going to ask about it when I came in. And yeah, so, well, I felt bad a little bit about it, but I also feel like, I had good reasons. Good reasons not to do it. Yeah, the line and all that sort of stuff. I didn't want to encroach on her time. Yeah. I think it's important when you look at if you don't carry out an assignment, what was that about? And I'm kind of wondering, I'm thinking back of last week, I wonder if I was a bit pushy. And, maybe it was more my agenda for you than your agenda for yourself. I just want to check that out. I think I should meet with my instructor. I really should. I think I need to do that. I just don't know. Maybe when it came time to do it, it was harder to get up there and ask her than I thought it was going to be, so I just didn't do it. Right. And did you write anything in your journal about what you did do and what was hard about it? I wrote a little bit. I really didn't focus too much on it, though. Yeah. Well, let me check with you. Is this something that you really want to do? Yes, I do. I do want to do it. I do want to approach your professor. Yes, I do. I just one in particular or all of them? Well, this particular one for sure. Okay. Because I feel like there's something going on. I raise my hand. she doesn't call on me, I just feel like maybe I'm not understanding what's going on in that classroom. So I really think that I need to meet with her.
Right.
There's something about her that just, I don't know, maybe I'm intimidated or something, just a little apprehensive.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I think the hardest part is just committing yourself to doing it. And we could practice it with her. Would that be helpful for you?
I think so, but she just seems so busy. She's really just scattered all the time. I don't know, I feel like I'm bothering her.
Okay. Well, let's do a little bit of what we call assertion training. Because it sounds
that would help, I think.
Yeah, it sounds like you're a little bit hesitant. And I want to give you an opportunity to approach her in sort of a direct and assertive style. So try something out. Approach me as though I were your professor and ask for time.
Oh, okay. Excuse me, do you have a couple minutes I can talk to you about the class?
Okay. Can I be your mirror for just a second? Excuse me. Yeah, just a couple of minutes. I can talk to you after. Like that. Not quite. No, I'm exaggerating. But it came across a little bit apologetic.
Right.
Want to try it again? Then do whatever you think. I
Okay.
just want to try your openness the first time.
Excuse me, can you spare a minute to talk with me about a few things?
Okay. How was that?
I don't know, seemed okay to me.
Okay.
Felt a little different.
Okay. Now, would you be willing to try something out? How about if I become you for a moment?
Okay.
I want to demonstrate something.
Okay.
You become the professor.
Okay.
Okay, I'll start off with you did. Excuse me, could you spare a moment or two?
Well, I'm kind of busy.
Yeah, I know. I appreciate that. But you did tell us the first day of class that you really want us to use your office hour. And I've been thinking about that. So I'd just like a few moments.
Wow, you did that really good.
Oh, okay. What did I do that was good?
You kind of said what she had said before and brought it up and kind of said what you needed. And
Yeah.
it seemed like you did it a lot better than I could. I just can't think that quickly on my toes.
Okay, well, that's why I want to practice it in these sessions.
Okay.
Behavior. To be very specific. So let's try it again.
Okay. Which one am I, me or the teacher?
Okay, good. Let's see. How about you being standing?
Okay.
And I'll be the teacher.
Okay.
Start again with the first line. Asking for time.
Excuse me, I'd like a minute of your time to talk about some things.
Okay. How did that opening line sound to your ear?
A little bit better than before.
Yeah, it sounded a little bit stronger. Let's redo it one more time. Okay.
Excuse me, I'd like a few moments to talk about some things that are related to the class.
How was that?
Better?
Yeah. Sounds a little more direct. A little more of yourself in there.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Let's take it a little bit longer, and I'll be that professor, okay?
Okay.
And, I teach you, so I can get into that.
Okay.
All righty?
Let's see, okay. Excuse me, Professor, can I have a couple minutes of your time just to talk about some things that are related to the class?
Oh gosh, how much time do you need?
Just a couple of minutes. Actually, I'd like to make an appointment with you if I could.
Oh, okay, well, go ahead and talk.
Well, I was thinking that maybe,
Yeah, I'm doing several things, but I'm listening to you.
okay,
I'm aware of class coming up.
maybe we could meet sometime during your office hours
Yeah,
to
that's,
talk about
that's not,
upcoming tasks.
that's not, we're having, this is office time.
Oh, well, maybe there's another time we could talk.
Oh, it never gets any better than this. I'm always way behind, I always got 10 things to do, and then time to do through them. But go ahead.
Okay, well,
Have about another minute and a half.
I'm kind of concerned about the midterm.
Oh, yeah, a lot of students, but don't worry about it. Don't sweat it.
Okay then. Thanks. I don't know what else I would say.
Okay.
That's kind of what I think would happen.
Freeze the act. Okay. How was that to do that?
I felt like it started off good, and then I kind of crashed.
Okay. What did you think of your professor? Is that the way she might have done it?
I think so. I mean, but perhaps. Maybe not as busy as you, but she seems
Preoccupied.
pretty preoccupied, yeah.
So, do you want me to model it? Again,
Yeah, how you would be able to do it?
I'm not telling you I do it perfectly.
Okay.
I'm just giving you another version.
Okay.
And maybe it could be this difficult for each professor.
Okay. I can do that.
Hi there.
Hello.
You told us to use your office time, and I'm finally doing it.
Oh, okay. Well, I only have a few minutes because I've got all the papers to grade.
Yeah. Well, I wasn't thinking we'd do everything today, but at least I want to take the first step of talking to you about how it is for you to be in your class.
Okay, well, perhaps I can grade the papers and you can talk to me while I'm grading the papers.
Yeah, okay. But I want to just tell you, I want to participate a lot more than I do. And but sometimes I just get stuck because I'm concerned that you might think about me.
Okay, well, that's good. I think a lot of people have that problem, and you should be able to do that just fine.
Yeah, well, I know, I look at others and they all look like they're smooth, like they have the answer, and that you favor them. And I just don't want to let that stop me. I really want to get them to be a lot more active in the class.
So you want me to call on you more? Or
No, I think that'd be too easy. I just want you to know that I like your class. I want to learn, and I'm going to push myself to ask a few more questions.
Sounds good.
Okay?
Okay.
Well,
Yeah.
I don't know. How do you do that?
Well, yeah. It's hard. I was trying to be the busy professor, but when you were talking, I got distracted. It was,
You got drawn in.
well, yeah, drawn in.
Okay. Well, I hope you're not going to try doing it my way. All I'm trying to do is, it's important you find your own voice and your own words. I was just maybe kind of giving you another way of being a little more persistent.
Right.
And maybe even 2 minutes is a good start, because at least you're not letting yourself get deterred by two people in line. And I think you're making a statement. You're saying, I'm worth at least 2 minutes of your time.
Guess I never thought of it that way.
Yeah. And did you hear I was just saying, even in the brief time I had, I said, I really want to do well in your class. I like your class, and I want to push myself to get more active. So any of that you think you might take home and think about and maybe try again?
Yeah.
Okay.
Especially just kind of re-saying or reiterating that you just want a brief period of time, just kind of stating it over.
Right. So before we end it, and we're approaching the end of the session, I'd just like to more collaborative work this out. Okay. I really want to find out if this is homework and something that you want to do. Is this moving you in the direction of meeting your goals?
Oh, yes, I really do want to do it. And I think the thing that gets in my way of doing it is getting just right there and then getting too nervous and kind of backing
Yeah. And what do you think would help you when you get right there and you get nervous?
I don't know, maybe taking a deep breath and just kind of maybe staying with it, just telling myself something.
Right.
Like it's going to be okay, or
Right.
I'm worth 2 minutes, something like that.
Both of those sound good. First of all, we've done some relaxation exercises, like deep breathing and closing your eyes and being aware of your breathing. Just getting centered with it. So that's one thing you could do. You just said, I am worth it. Maybe just tell yourself, I'm worth at least 2 minutes.
Okay,
How's that?
I can do that.
Okay, now when will you do this?
Well, I have class on Wednesday.
Okay,
She has her office hours right after class, so I can approach her. Maybe even if I'm there a little early and she comes in, I can ask her if she has a minute to me after class. Kind of set it up a little bit.
good.
If I do that, then I have to do it.
I like your energy. As you're talking, you seem a lot more animated.
Yeah, I feel like I could do it. I just need a little kick in the pants a little bit.
Okay, can you imagine me kicking you in the pants?
Yes.
Sort of a gentle, loving sort of way. Okay, let's do that. And don't worry if you don't, I'm not gonna grade you on this performance. If you don't do it the way you like it, that's all right, we can talk about it. I just think it's so important that you're willing to take what we're talking about in here and put it into action out there in the real world. So it may not sound like a big deal, but I think it is very important. If you're willing to try something out there, oh yeah. Okay, good luck.
All right. Oh,
In this
no.
behavior therapy session with Stan, I think the salient piece here is that Stan didn't.
Okay, so what did you think about that?
Very concrete, right?
I thought it kind of interesting that the relationship that you were rejected, kind of like, which is mentioned kind of really challenging and to really think about like what he's saying, like, bother his behavior, so that he can kind of like pick up on that, kind of learn how to do it on his own, Because it's really,
Yeah. And see how it circles back, like he's practicing it. What he practices grows stronger. Like he's literally creating a pathway in his brain by practicing positive communication.
right.
And so Dr. Corey won't let him off the hook, right? He's like, okay, well, let's try that again. Okay, now do this, you're thinking, this is so bad, come on. But keep practicing with him so you can create a new pathway of how you can address this behavior. Circling it all back.
I do see it changing, like, his demeanor change, kind of like, well, I can do this.
Yeah. And that's the whole thing, is that when we model behavior and we role play it, we're helping people feel more empowered to be able to achieve their goals, whatever it is. This is like a small goal to manage his anxiety about his class, right? But when we learn from this, he can be able to use in another situation that might come his way, and there's a million of them coming his way. But he's true. But you'll see is that it'll help him then be able to address the next situation or assertive. Now the thing is that if we were using cognitive behavioral therapy, we would have stopped way before we got to this role play part. We would have been like, okay, let's talk about some self-esteem issues. Let's talk about like before underlying beliefs that you're not worth 2 minutes. Let's talk about those beliefs and those thoughts. Because that's what we're going to talk about next week. But for now, we're saying really concrete, like stimuli response. He gets anxious and then he doesn't make noise anymore. But his role play is now, he's modeled behavior for him. And he's done it enough so that maybe when he's standing in line and he's starting to feel anxious, he'll be able to do it anyway and realize he can overcome that. All right. I'll see you all next week.
I didn't. But what I did do